Dax pressed his ear against the cold metal wall, listening for footsteps in the corridor beyond. Nothing. He waited 10 more heartbeats, the way Marine Parson had taught him during those final chaotic minutes in Franco Knoll. Then carefully opened the maintenance hatch. 3 weeks had passed since the evacuation trains, but the underground tunnels of Lazarus Station still felt like a tomb to him. The artificial lights hummed constantly, casting harsh shadows that reminded him too much of the emergency lighting during the bombardment. Sometimes he couldn't tell if he was awake or still trapped in the nightmares that came every time he tried to sleep. The corridor was empty, just like he'd hoped. Dax slipped out of the maintenance shaft and padded silently toward the food distribution center, his stomach cramped with hunger. He'd missed the morning meal again because of another nightmare about his mother. "You're not supposed to be here alone." Dax spun around, his heart hammering. A girl about his age stood behind him, arms crossed. She had the pale skin of someone born in the asteroid belt and the serious expression of someone who'd seen too much. "Neither are you," Dax pointed out. The girl shrugged. "I'm Zoe. I live in Section C with the other asteroid kids. You're the one who came on the last train from Franco Knoll." Dax nodded. "I'm Dax." "I know. Everyone knows about you. You're the one Marine Parson saved." Zoe studied him with curious eyes. "Want to know a secret?" Despite himself, Dax was interested. "What secret?" "There's a place where you can see outside, the real surface, not just these stupid painted stars on the ceiling." Dax's breath caught. "That's impossible. We're too deep underground." "Not if you know where to look." Zoe grinned. "But it's dangerous, and you have to promise not to tell any adults." Dax hesitated. Every adult in Lazarus Station had told him the same thing since arriving. Stay with the group, don't wander off, don't take risks. But the thought of seeing the real Martian sky again, even if Earth had ruined it, was too tempting to resist. "I promise," he said. Zoe led him through a maze of maintenance corridors, past humming machinery and through spaces so narrow they had to crawl. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd spent her whole life in artificial environments, reading the subtle signs of air pressure and temperature that told you which way led to safety. "First rule of surviving when your world ends," she said, as they crawled through a particularly tight shaft. "Learn every inch of wherever you're hiding. Know 3 ways out of every room. Always have a backup plan." "Is that what happened to you? Your world ended?" Zoe was quiet for a moment. "Ceres Station. Earth hit it 2 years ago. Killed everyone except the kids who were in the deep mining tunnels during shift change." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Dax could hear the pain underneath. 60,000 people. I was in school, learning about Earth history. Ironic, right? They emerged into a larger chamber that Dax didn't recognize. Ancient excavation equipment sat covered in dust, and the walls showed tool marks from the original mining operations that had carved out these tunnels decades ago. "This is the old survey station," Zoe explained. "Before they built Lazarus Station down here, this was just a geological research site. The scientists who worked here installed observation equipment that goes all the way to the surface." She led him to a console covered in blinking lights. Above it, a screen showed static. "Second rule," Zoe continued, flipping switches with practiced ease. "Information is survival. You need to know what's happening outside your hiding place, even if you can't do anything about it." The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy view of the Martian surface. Dax gasped. Where Franco Knoll had once stood, there was nothing but blackened crater and twisted metal. Earth's bombardment had been even more thorough than he'd imagined. "They're not just occupying our cities," Zoe said quietly. "They're erasing them. Look." She changed the camera angle. In the distance, massive Earth construction machines moved across the landscape, tearing down the remaining structures and feeding the debris into mobile processing plants. The sky was an ugly brown color from all the dust and smoke. "What are they building?" Dax whispered. "New cities. Earth cities. Like our homes never existed." Zoe's hands tightened into fists. They're not just killing us, they're killing our history. Dax stared at the screen, watching the systematic destruction of everything he'd ever known. How do you deal with it, knowing it's all gone? Third rule, Zoe said, switching to another camera feed. You don't fight the grief, you use it. Anger can keep you alive when everything else fails. This new view showed one of Earth's construction sites. Prefabricated buildings were rising where a Martian farming community had once stood. Earth colonists moved between the structures, setting up their new lives on the graves of the old ones. There, Zoe pointed to a section of the construction site. See those kids? Dax squinted at the screen. Earth children, maybe 8 or 9 years old, were playing in a fenced area while their parents worked. They looked normal, happy even. They don't know, Dax realized. Their parents probably told them this was just empty land. Fourth rule, Zoe said, never forget that your enemies have families too. It doesn't make them less dangerous, but it keeps you human. She cycled through more camera feeds, showing Earth bases scattered across Mars's surface. Supply ships landing and taking off. Patrol vehicles moving between installations, the methodical efficiency of an occupying force that intended to stay forever. Why are you showing me this? Dax asked. Because you need to understand what we're really up against. Zoe turned to face him. The adults in Lazarus Station, they think we can hide down here until Earth gets bored and leaves. But Earth isn't going to leave. This is their new home now. So what do? We survive. We learn. We get stronger. Zoe's eyes gleamed in the monitor light. And someday, when we're old enough and smart enough and ready enough, we take our world back. The two of us? Zoe grinned. Not just us. There are others. Kids from across Mars whose homes got destroyed. And maybe kids from other places too. Ceres wasn't the only non-Earth settlement that got hit. We find each other. We teach each other. We remember what the adults are trying to forget. What are they trying to forget? That this isn't over. That hiding isn't living. That Mars was ours before Earth decided they wanted it. A new image appeared on the screen. An Earth transport ship landing at one of the construction sites. As the cargo bay opened, dozens of families emerged, carrying suitcases and children's toys. Colonists ready to start their new lives. Fifth rule, Zoe said, watching the families unload their belongings. Hope is a weapon, but only if you're willing to fight for what you hope for. Dax stared at the screen, thinking about everything he'd lost and everything he might never get back. His mother, his home, the sky he'd grown up under. All of it gone, replaced by Earth's version of the future. But he was still here, still alive. Still remembering. What's the most important rule? He asked. Zoe smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. That's for you to figure out. Everyone's got their own secret for surviving when their world ends. The trick is finding yours before it's too late. She began shutting down the monitoring equipment. We should get back before they notice we're gone. But, Dax? Yeah? Come back tomorrow. I'll show you how to access the communication arrays. If there are other survivors out there, other kids like us, we need to find them. As they crawled back through the maintenance shafts, Dax thought about the Earth children he'd seen playing in the construction site. They were about his age, living in homes built where Martian children had once played. The thought should have made him angry, but instead it made him sad. They were just kids. They hadn't chosen this war any more than he had. But they were also the future Earth wanted. A generation that would grow up thinking Mars had always belonged to them, unless someone was there to tell them different. Zoe, he said as they reached the main corridors of Lazarus Station. What if we could talk to them, the Earth kids? What do you mean? You said information is survival. What if we could give them information, tell them what really happened here? Zoe stopped crawling and looked back at him. That's actually not a terrible idea, but it would be incredibly dangerous. Everything's dangerous now, Dax pointed out, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the secret to surviving isn't just about hiding and waiting. Maybe it's about planting seeds. Seeds? Truth seeds. Stories that grow in people's minds, so that someday, when those Earth kids are adults, they'll remember that Mars wasn't empty when their parents got here. Zoe was quiet for a long moment. Then she grinned. Rule 6. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to make sure the next generation knows there was a war to begin with. They emerged into the main corridor just as the evening meal bell began to ring. Around them, refugees streamed toward the dining halls, their faces showing the strain of 3 weeks underground. "Tomorrow," Zoe whispered as they joined the crowd, "I'll show you the communication arrays, and maybe we can start planting some seeds." Dax nodded, feeling something he hadn't felt since the evacuation. Purpose. The secret to surviving a spacepocalypse wasn't just about staying alive. It was about making sure that survival meant something. As he walked toward the dining hall, Dax pulled the carved Phobos charm from his pocket. He'd made it to replace the one he'd given to Marine Parson, but looking at it now, he realized it represented something more. It was proof that he remembered. Proof that Mars had existed before Earth came. Proof that some things were worth preserving, even when preserving them seemed impossible. Tomorrow he would start learning how to preserve them. The next morning, Dax woke before the artificial dawn cycle began in Lazarus Station. He'd slept better than he had since the evacuation, his mind focused on something other than the nightmares. He had a mission now. He found Zoe waiting in the same maintenance shaft where they'd met the day before. She had a backpack full of supplies and a serious expression that made her look older than her 8 years. "You sure about this?" she asked. "Once we start reaching out to the surface, there's no going back. Earth monitors all communications. Eventually they'll figure out someone's down here." Dax thought about the Earth children he'd seen playing in the ruins of a Martian community. "I'm sure." "Good. Then let's go learn how to start a revolution." She led him deeper into the old mining complex, past areas even more ancient than the survey station. The walls here showed the marks of the original colonists who'd carved these tunnels by hand, desperate to find resources that would keep their new world alive. "This whole complex is bigger than anyone realizes," Zoe explained as they walked. "The official Lazarus Station is just the central hub, but these old mining tunnels stretch for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Some of them even connect to other underground facilities." "Other facilities?" "Emergency bunkers, research stations, even some old military installations from the Independence Wars." Zoe's voice carried a note of excitement. "Dax, we're not the only survivors. There are people hiding all over Mars, in places Earth doesn't even know exist." They reached a heavy blast door marked with colonial military symbols. Zoe produced a key card from her backpack and swiped it through the reader. The door opened with a soft hiss. "Where did you get that?" Dax asked. "Found it on a dead officer during the series evacuation. Figured it might come in handy someday." Zoe's matter-of-fact tone reminded Dax that she'd been surviving impossible situations for 2 years longer than he had. Beyond the blast door was a military communication center that looked like it had been abandoned in a hurry. Banks of equipment lined the walls, and holographic displays showed tactical information from the final days of the war. "Welcome to Firebase Olympus," Zoe announced. Military communication hubs. The military evacuated it right before the final bombardment, but they left all the equipment behind. Dax stared at the sophisticated technology. "Does it still work?" "Most of it. The communication systems are still connected to the planetary network. If there are other survivor groups on Mars, we can reach them." Zoe began powering up the systems. "But more importantly, this equipment can tap into Earth's communication networks. We can listen to their transmissions, maybe even send them some transmissions of our own." As the systems came online, the room filled with a soft hum of active electronics. Holographic displays showed communication networks spanning Mars. Most showed red markers, colonial stations that had gone dark, but a few still pulsed green. "There!" Zoe pointed to a green marker in the northern polar region. Borealis Research Station is still active. And look, New Shanghai's underground district. even some of the deep mining complexes in the southern highlands. They're still fighting? No, they're doing what we're doing, hiding, surviving, waiting. Zoe's fingers danced over the control interface. But together, maybe we can do more than just wait. She opened a communication channel to Borealis Station. After a few moments of static, a voice crackled through the speakers. Firebase Olympus, this is Borealis Station. We thought you were destroyed weeks ago. Zoe keyed the microphone. Borealis Station, this is... Call me Phoenix. Firebase Olympus is operating under emergency protocols. What's your status? Phoenix, we've got about 800 refugees down here, including maybe 100 kids. Food situation is getting tight. Earth patrols are expanding their search patterns every day. Dax felt his heart sink. 800 people, slowly running out of supplies while Earth forces closed in. It was the same story everywhere. More recent station, Zoe continued, we're working on something that might help. Can you patch us through to the other survivor groups? Stand by, Phoenix. Over the next hour, Zoe established contact with survivor groups across Mars. The picture that emerged was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Hundreds of thousands of Martian refugees were hiding in forgotten corners of their world, from polar research stations to deep mining tunnels in the planet's most remote regions. But they were scattered, isolated, and slowly being picked off by Earth forces. What they needed was coordination, communication, hope. Here's what I'm thinking, Zoe said after they'd finished the initial round of contacts. Earth controls the main communication networks, but they can't monitor everything. We set up a secret network just for Mars survivors, share information, coordinate resources, maybe even plan some resistance operations. And the Earth kids? Dax asked. How do we reach them? Zoe grinned. That's where it gets interesting. Earth's colonists use civilian communication networks, entertainment channels, educational programs, social networks. Their kids are plugged into all of it. She brought up a holographic display showing Earth's civilian networks. Hundreds of channels carried everything from news programs to children's shows to interactive games. We hack into their systems, Zoe explained. Slip our messages into their entertainment feeds, tell our stories, share our history, make sure Earth's children know what really happened here. Won't Earth figure out what we're doing? Eventually. But by then the seeds will be planted. Earth can control what their kids see officially, but they can't control what those kids remember. Dax thought about this for a moment. What kind of messages? Stories. Real stories about life on Mars before the war. Pictures of our cities, our families, our dreams, but also the truth about what Earth did to us. Zoe's voice hardened. They want to erase our history? We'll make sure their own children learn it. They spent the rest of the day learning the communication systems and establishing secure channels to the other survivor groups. By evening, they had created what Zoe called the Ghost Network, a hidden communication system linking refugee communities across Mars. This is just the beginning, she said as they prepared to return to Lazarus Station. Tomorrow, we start reaching out to Earth's civilian networks. And Dax? Yeah? You were right about planting seeds, but I think there's something even more important we can do. What's that? We can grow gardeners, kids like us, in every survivor community on Mars, learning how to keep the truth alive, so that no matter what happens to our generation, the next one will know who we really were. As they walked back through the ancient tunnels, Dax realized that Zoe had taught him something crucial about surviving an apocalypse. It wasn't enough to just stay alive, you had to stay human. You had to remember what you were fighting for, and most importantly, you had to make sure that memory survived even if you didn't. Zoe, he said as they reached the entrance to Lazarus Station, what do you think the most important rule really is? The one you said I had to figure out for myself? She stopped and looked at him seriously. What do you think it is? Dax thought about everything they'd done that day, the contacts with other survivors, the plans to reach Earth's children, the network they were building to preserve their history. The secret to surviving a space apocalypse, he said slowly, isn't about survival at all. It's about making sure that something good grows from the ashes, even if you never get to see it yourself. Zoe smiled. That's a pretty good secret to know. As they rejoined the flow of refugees heading to the evening meal, Dax felt the carved Phobos charm in his pocket. Tomorrow he would help broadcast its image across Mars, along with the story of what it meant and why it mattered. Mars might be occupied, but its memory would live on. And someday that memory might inspire a new generation to build something better than what had come before. The secret to surviving a space-pocalypse, Dax now understood, was making sure the apocalypse wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. Thank you, channel member and Pathfinder Caroline Lajoie, for making this video possible. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.